Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining us. This is Jeff Bronstein from Spectra. I'm a senior product manager here to talk about BlackPearl today. Thanks a lot for joining us. We'll go ahead and get started now. Just a housekeeping item before we get started. We have all of you attendees on mute to help prevent minimized background noise. If you have any questions throughout the session, send your questions through the chat box in the WebEx application, and we'll review those together at the end. We'll also get, depending on how background noise is, we'll try unmuting you. If it's background sound isn't too loud, then we'll go ahead and unmute you so you can ask questions over the phone as well. If you're trying to help others get on, please make sure they're aware that the audio today is via telephone only. I've got the instructions there. They can also get that information when they log on to the WebEx. It'll show them the phone numbers that are available. In terms of what we're going to cover today, obviously we're going to talk about BlackPearl. I'm going to give you an overview of it. Some of you already have a pretty good feel for how it works, but some of you don't, so I want to just quickly review what it is and how it works. Then we'll get into some more of the fun details, which is how it actually works in using it. So we're going to connect to a BlackPearl simulator and also a remotely accessible BlackPearl that we can give you access to. Both of those allow you to use real applications and try them out that are intended for BlackPearl. Then we'll try one of our most interesting applications that's easy and free. It's the Eon browser. Allows you to move files over to BlackPearl very simply. And we'll talk about the Java command line interface, which is sort of a command line version of the same thing. Then we'll actually use our software development kits to build a real basic client. We can show you just how easy that is to do. So we'll get our hands a little dirty today, which will be good. This session is being recorded, and we will be sending out an email with a link to the recording, of course, as well as a link to all the things that I talk about here today and the slide deck. So in terms of where BlackPearl fits in SpectraLogic's hybrid storage ecosystem, as we call it, let's talk a little bit about that real quickly. So traditionally, probably most of you have known SpectraLogic as a tape library vendor, and we're very proud of our tape libraries, of course. And traditionally, we've worked with a lot of great partners like NetBackup, Veritas NetBackup, or Front Porch Digital, and they've had software that writes data directly to our tape libraries. In other words, they can talk directly to each of those individual drives and communicate directly. And that's been a great avenue of and ability to provide solutions to our customers is via those types of partners. The other thing, of course, we have is our networked attached storage. This is our Verde product line. So people that can just want to get data into our deep storage via a traditional file system interface. But as you can see, and I'm one of the BlackPearl product managers, so I like to think that BlackPearl is the center of our universe, as the picture shows. So BlackPearl is our object-based storage gateway. So the way that works is data can come in through the BlackPearl to say, archive it, and there's a number of targets behind the BlackPearl that can move data, have data moved to them. So we started with tape, but now we've also got disk, we've got other BlackPearls, and we've got public cloud, and we'll talk a little bit more about that. But this has really made it easier for our users to get to our deep storage and archive data. So let's talk a little bit more about that. So why would people use BlackPearl? The first is, when are they going to use it, of course? So they're going to use it typically for unstructured data, right? So data that's unstructured, not changing over time. So videos, backup files, research data, lots of different things. But it's typically not, for example, a database, something that's changing frequently and over time. It's typically something that is a one-time event type file that you want to store. And really, typically, when you're talking about BlackPearl, you're typically going to be talking about hundreds of terabytes to petabytes of data. Why is BlackPearl interesting? Well, it's really the overall cost effectiveness of it, being able to provide a complete archive deep storage type solution at pennies per gigabyte. Also, it's highly scalable. So we can start in the low teens of terabytes, let's say, or 50 terabytes, and we can go up to exabytes or more if you need to. We can provide highly durable storage, of course, so getting to tape, which of course is the most reliable storage medium. Also important, being able to get to multiple storage mediums to have that true, as we call it, genetic diversity of storage. And of course, being able to have it all from a single vendor is really key, that we provide the complete solution. So why did we create BlackPearl, though? What was the real bottom line of why SpectraLogic created BlackPearl? Well, as I mentioned, we've got these great tape libraries, and we've had customers that wanted to move data to archive and store data on our tape libraries because they're the most cost-effective and reliable storage technology available. But we've been dependent, of course, on some partners to actually move that data from the customer storage to our deep storage. And this software was complex because it had to talk to each individual tape drive in the library and manage data in and out, knowing when they're busy and so forth. We wanted to reduce that complexity so that we could have a bigger ecosystem and be able to provide things at a lower cost, because oftentimes that software that I've labeled, relatively complex, is also relatively expensive, and it's also priced very often on the amount that you're storing or the amount of tape drives or amount of slots. And so the more you store, the more expensive it gets. So what we did instead is we created the BlackPearl gateway. So now BlackPearl handles all that complex communication to the tape library, and we instead on the front end provide an interface we call Spectra S3, which is an extension of or superset of Amazon's the standard S3 protocol popularized by Amazon. So instead of having this big complex software package, we can now create something that has a much lower barrier, a smaller software client, much easier to integrate with. People that previously couldn't talk to a tape library due to the complexity now can talk to Spectra S3, greatly reducing their barrier to get things into our deep storage. So it really simplified it for our customers, for our partners, and really expanded our ecosystem. So once we added tape behind BlackPearl, we realized that, wow, this is also a great item for different other targets, right? Other storage targets. So now we have our Arctic Blue power down disk, which is again very low cost, near the price of tape, but more of a performance-like disk. We have our online archive disk, which is typically uses enterprise SAS drives. We can also make copies to other BlackPearls at other locations so that we can replicate the data. We can do that bidirectionally. We can also provide disaster recovery copies to Amazon and Microsoft Azure. So what does BlackPearl look like in terms of the ins and outs of it? So on the front end, you're going to have an Ethernet type interface, either 10 gigabit or 40 gigabit typically is what we're seeing depending on the performance that's needed. So that's just going to be on kind of the basic customer type Ethernet network. On the backside of BlackPearl, it kind of creates its own private network in most cases, and it's going to use whatever the appropriate connection is for the technology. So for our tape drives, we most often see fiber channel, so we do some SAS. For our disk connectivity, we're going to do SAS typically, and then for replication and out to the public cloud, we'd use HTTP over Ethernet. So that's sort of the ins and outs of BlackPearl from the outside view. In terms of what's on the inside, we have a number of components within BlackPearl that are important to understand. The first is the cache of BlackPearl. So when a client sends data to BlackPearl, it first lands on the BlackPearl cache. This is a set of enterprise SAS drives. And so that comes in, there's different sizes for that cache. And the more cache drives you have, you obviously have a bigger cache. You can store more, but also you have higher performance. So we have actually 3 different BlackPearls, and they have different varying amounts of cache depending on what kind of performance we have. So you can see we have a V, an S, and a P series. So the V series starts at about 200 megabytes a second, going all the way up to our P series, which goes at 3,000 megabytes per second, and that actually uses mostly solid-state drives. So that's the cache, and that's, again, data lands there so that we can more efficiently stream it to the storage target, so whether that's tape or something else. Especially important for tape, where we like to write a lot of files in sequence because tape is a sequential medium, of course. In terms of the other important component in BlackPearl, this is the database, or you could call it the metadata component of BlackPearl. So it keeps track of, all those things about the file that you care about, what the name is, what the size is, when it was created, who uploaded it, and of course, most importantly, where is it, right? Which tape or which disk system is on exactly where is it? That's where all that information is kept. So we have, depending on the size of the disks that the database is stored on, we can store more objects. So we typically put the database on solid-state drives, and we can start at, say, for example, our entry-level box, the V series, we can hold about 300 million objects with 2 solid-state drives, going all the way up to our P and S series, which with the maximum of solid-state drives, they can record about 1 billion objects. What does that mean? Like every file you upload is an object, right? So that's the database that keeps track of those files that get converted to objects on the backside in BlackPearl. So that's important to understand that tracking. We, of course, carefully back up everything so the database is backed up itself. We typically, if we're connected to a tape library, we'll back it up to tape. You can also back it up to disk and to the cloud and so forth. But we do have that level of protection on the drives. So how does BlackPearl work in terms of when data comes in? So when data comes in, it comes into what we call a bucket. A bucket is a top-level container, so you can kind of think of it as a folder. But the most important thing about a bucket is you can set different data policies on it. So in this example here, we have a bucket that has a data policy with 4 rules, actually. And we want to, that's because we want to put it in 4 different places. We want to put it on online disk for 30 days. We want to put it on our power down nearline disk, that's the Arctic Blue disk, for 2 years. Then we want to make a permanent copy to tape over here, that's the 3rd rule. And we also want another permanent copy to tape, but we want it to be ejected. So as the data comes in, what happens is that gets put here into the bucket, and right up front, we move all the data to all 4 of those locations. So it's a little different from a typical hierarchical storage management system in that we put the data into all the targets immediately. Then the temporary persistent targets, we expire it from those locations. So after 30 days, it'll disappear from there. After 2 years, it'll disappear from there. And I should mention that BlackPearl is intelligent enough to always pull the copy from the fastest storage medium that it has available. So it always knows that. And that's why you, for example, may have a rule that says, you know, for 30 days I want it on disk, but I always want it on tape. And that's because I know that in the first 30 days of archiving a file, I'm more likely to restore it. So I want it on disk so that it'll come back quickly because I might need it quickly. But after that, I don't care about getting it back fast as much. And so it can expire off that disk, but I definitely want to keep a copy on tape, and maybe I want a copy to be ejected. So I have a lot of controls over how the data policies work, and we call that advanced bucket management. Now, in terms of, if I go back here, how did that data get into the bucket? Well, the data got into the bucket by a client talking to BlackPearl via what we call Spectra S3. So this is a HTTP-based protocol. It's very similar to what the calls your browser makes. For example, when you request yahoo.com, you're doing a HTTP request. That's the same type of communication we use for our Spectra S3 protocol. It's an extension of the standard S3 protocol, as I mentioned. It's a little different because we want to support tape behind our gateway. So we have the delay of tape when you're retrieving things. Obviously, there's a longer delay. And also, we like to work in groups of files, or we call them bulk operations, so that we can send lots of files to tape at once. So that's really the main difference between the 2 protocols, and we'll touch on that bit more in a second. But because of this really standard and simple protocol, we've got a lot of partners that we're able to use our developer framework, which we'll see in a minute, to build clients. So we've got lots of different clients that have been built with BlackPearl by our partners, by ourselves, by our customers to interact with BlackPearl. And here's an example of some of our media and entertainment software products that have integrated directly in BlackPearl. For example, here's CatDV on the left. They're able to archive directly from their software, from their CatDV server to BlackPearl. All they had to do was integrate our Java software development kits, because CatDV is written in Java. They integrated those software development kits, added some code for the archive and restore operations, and they could talk directly to BlackPearl. In the past, CatDV would have needed a product we typically refer to as middleware to move those files from CatDV to our tape libraries. It's no longer needed. It's greatly reduced the cost, the complexity, the number of vendors involved, and that's all been really our target. So we've really made it easy for our partners to integrate BlackPearl with their environments to more easily archive and more affordably archive. We also have created a number of clients that we'll see some of these in a minute that are free and open source. So you can actually do some very basic but powerful archive and restore operations to BlackPearl using these free and open source tools. And also we have these software development kits, as I mentioned, in a very simple, that overlay the BlackPearl Spectra S3 API. What we find also is that we typically, almost all of our customers that use BlackPearl have multiple paths into BlackPearl. So in the past, when SpectraLogic sold tape libraries, we might sell a tape library to a customer for, say, a traditional backup. They might use that tape library for tape backup and nothing else. That was it. And that was really their only path into the tape library. So they had this really low-cost, reliable storage, but they couldn't use it beyond their net backup software or something like that. So with these tools now, we have multiple paths into the deep storage, into the low-cost storage. So customers are really excited and utilizing greatly these different tools, multiple tools in parallel, because in the real world is that they have many workflows, many different types of files that they want to be able to archive. So that we all made this possible with a developer website. And let's actually go ahead and take a look at that right now. So if I go to developer.spectralogic.com, this is where the program is for BlackPearl, and we'll send you a link to this after the presentation today. So on this website, you can find all the tools you need to build a BlackPearl integration. So if you actually go to our Get Started page here, it'll walk you through all the different parts and pieces that you need. The first thing is, that's important to understand is that is just the different components. So let's look at this. Let's look at this diagram here real quick. So this shows a diagram of the kind of the flow. So you've seen this before, but over here on the right is BlackPearl and what we refer to as the BlackPearl private cloud. So BlackPearl with the storage targets. Over on the left is the customer's data that they have, and then what we typically do is we overlay BlackPearl, even though the Spectra S3 protocol with the HTTP protocol is pretty simple. We make it even easier by providing software development kits that overlay and abstract that Spectra S3 interface. We provide those in Java, C#.NET, C, and Python. So we make it as easy as possible for customers to integrate the BlackPearl archive and restore operations within their existing applications. So this is a client application that would have integrated those software development kits, and so the data flows through in this manner. The software development kits actually become part of the code library of the client application, and then they can use that code library to issue those simple archive and restore commands. It is important to understand that we are Spectra S3. It's different than traditional S3, so we do expect that people to use the Spectra S3 protocol. We have some limited support of standard S3, but we really need people to focus on the Spectra S3. It really helps us take advantage of the features of BlackPearl and having tape behind BlackPearl. So to get started, you want to be able to connect to a BlackPearl, right? So we have a couple ways that you can work with to interface with BlackPearl. The first I'll mention, of course, is our remote BlackPearl. So we'll give you access to a BlackPearl over the internet, and you can contact us here, as you can see. But once we give you access to that, we'll give you access via your internet IP address. We'll give you access to that BlackPearl, and then you can really use it for anything you want. And this is, we refer to it as BP Lab. It's the BlackPearl in one of the BlackPearls in our lab, of course. And you can log on to that yourself, and you can issue commands to it, and you can connect to it with some of the clients that we've been looking at. And this is what I really recommend you do, is you use this, if you do want to do some demos to customers or play with it or do anything with BlackPearl, I recommend you contact us and connect to this BlackPearl. Because it is a real BlackPearl, it has a real tape library behind it, and it's a more better model for what your customers would truly see in their environments. Now, we do also have a BlackPearl simulator. And you can also download this right here from the downloads page, and we'll just go and look at that real quick. Now, the simulator simulates a real BlackPearl. It runs as a virtual machine. It runs in VirtualBox. You can see it runs right here. And so this is running the BlackPearl. Now, all it does, though, is it only simulates the BlackPearl and itself and its cache. It does not simulate the storage targets behind it, and we'll see why that's an issue in a minute. It's also it's more complex to set up the simulator. There's quite a few steps. We have it fully detailed out here, and you certainly can do it. But I do, again, recommend that if you can, you use our remote BlackPearl that you can access over the internet. If you need to use the simulator, that's fine. We understand. Keep in mind, it only runs in VirtualBox. It doesn't work on any other virtualized software. We are looking at adding it to VMware in the future, but right now it only works on VirtualBox. But just as I could access the web management interface of this real BlackPearl, I can go ahead and I can access the BlackPearl simulator right here. And I think it was 21, if I recall. And it just says it doesn't have an SSL certificate. That's fine. Spectra. Spectra is our default login and password. And now you can see there's not much difference between what the simulator looks like and the real BlackPearl. So that's a good option. So you basically have two options, and I use both of them. So that's another thing you can consider doing. Now let's actually use a client to work through and see how BlackPearl actually works. So as I mentioned, we have this browser. It's called the Eon browser. In fact, we just released this. We'll send you. There's a link to it on the developer website. We had an older version, but this is a new version. It's got a lot of nice new features. So what we can do here, this is a lot like an FTP program. And so what we've got over here on the left side is we've got our file system, and over on the right will be our BlackPearl. Let's just go ahead, and I'm going to delete these so that we'll start over. You can see how I add these. So let's go ahead and add a new BlackPearl to this interface. So let's first start with our real BlackPearl. So let's go to BP Lab. So there it is, and we're going to go get a user because that's how we're going to connect to this user, to this BlackPearl. We need user information. So I'm going to click on a user, and I'm going to get what's called the S3 credentials. So let me just do that. I went too fast here. I clicked on the user, then I went to Action, Show S3 credentials. Now I want to copy these over to that interface. So I'm going to copy that over. And where are we? Sorry, there we are. There's our interface. So let's also name this. It's called BP Lab. This is bplab.spectralogic.com. That's the address of the path. The access ID is this. Here's the secret key. See if that works. We'll save that. Session saved successfully. Now we have a saved session, so we can go back and use it in the future. We'll click on Open, and now we have our connected to our BlackPearl. Now we can create a bucket if we want. So let's go ahead and do that, and we'll just call it Jeff1, and I'll set a data policy on that of single copy to tape. So you can see BlackPearl has a number of data policies. Some of them come pre-programmed with the BlackPearl based on what storage targets are connected to it. They're created automatically by BlackPearl, and then you can also add your own. So we've added some more. But let's go ahead and use single copy on tape for our data policy. I'll go ahead and create that bucket. If I scroll down now, I'll see that. There's Jeff1, and I can also see that in the web management interface. If I go to Configuration and Buckets, I can go to Jeff. You can see it was created by user Spectra, and the data policy is single copy on tape. I can also control who has access to that bucket, by the way. I can set different permissions for people. I can set, a different user, and I can say they get list or read or whatever. So there's a nice way to control users at the bucket level. Let's go ahead and create a couple other new buckets because I'm going to use those for some of the other tests we're going to do. So let's create Jeff2. We'll use the same policy for all of them. And we will create Jeff3. Single bucket on copy on tape. Okay, let's go ahead and actually just drag some files over to that, to one of those buckets. So let me go to temp here. And let's just copy over, I think let's try dir1. I don't think I have too much in there. So what happened is as we copied that, so I just dragged and dropped, if you didn't see that, into bucket Jeff1. I got a progress bar here. This shows the progress of the files because there was multiple files here in dir1. As the bar filled up, that was showing the amount of the job of the group of files that had gotten to BlackPearl's cache. And once the blue bar filled up, that means that all of the files have made it to BlackPearl's cache. So let's go take a look at that. If we go to Status, S3 Jobs, there's our job right there, because I know it because it says Jeff1 for the bucket. The total size of the job was 254 kilobytes. Of that, 254 kilobytes made it to the BlackPearl cache. So in this column, it's telling me that it's all in cache. However, you can see that this job is considered active. It's not yet completed. And that is because it has not yet made it to the storage target. And since we chose single copy to tape, that means it hasn't yet made it to the tape. So how can we see that in the browser? Well, if we go back to this bucket and we click on refresh, we'll see the files now. And we'll see if we look at them that right now it says it's in cache. So there's a little storage location icon that tells you that. As BlackPearl starts working here in the next minute or two, it will write those files to tape. And what will happen then is that this job will write the files to tape. The job will be considered complete. This progress bar will go away because the job is no longer need to be displayed because it's safely all stored. And then there'll be another icon here that is a little tape, and it will say 1 copy on tape if you mouse over it. So that's how these work. And we have storage location icons for all our different types of storage targets, whether it's our cloud, disk, or replicated to another BlackPearl or whatever. So that's how the basic operation of archive works. And so this is a really, there's a couple points to make here. One is this is a really great and powerful application that users can use. It's free. They can use it. They can just drag and drop files to their BlackPearl deep storage. And this solves a lot of our customers' problems. A lot of people are using this all day long, and they've got multiple people using it at their site. And it's very basic, but it's very powerful. There's lots of other good information you can get about the file when you say right-click on it. You can get physical placement, which once it moves to tape, we'll be able to see the actual tape barcode label that the file is on, so you can get very specific information. You can also get metadata. So this metadata is above and beyond the basic information that the BlackPearl collects. The deep storage browser actually writes some specific metadata about the files, such as when it was created, who has access to it, and so forth. Then when the file is restored, it does a best attempt effort to restore as many of those properties as possible back onto the file when it's restored. Oh, and now we can actually see that the job is complete, so it's no longer on the tab. If I click on refresh here, I'll see that now the files are on tape, so I get the icon on tape, and I can right-click on this and say physical placement, and it'll give me the barcode label. Now, there's also an icon for an ejected tape. So if, let's say, the customer has archived some data, and then they eject the tapes because they don't want to fill up their tape library or they want an offsite copy, it'll actually have an icon separate that represents an ejected tape. If they attempt to restore a file that's on an ejected tape, they'll get a message that tells them, hey, you can't restore this because the file is on an ejected tape, and here is the barcode label of that tape. Go get the tape and try your job again. So it's very clear in terms of what they have to do if they want to try to restore a file. So that's how that works. Now let's also connect real quickly just because I want to show you the simulator because it's slightly different. I want you to understand that. So again, remember we've got this simulator running, and we've got this IP address that's displayed. And it actually, we use the same IP address for both the web management interface and to connect to it to move data. But we use a different port number. So let's look at that. So we're going to call this the simulator as the name that we want it displayed. For the path, we'll do 192.168.1.21. Let me just double check, make sure that's right. There it is. Now for the port number, we're going to use 8080. And for the access ID, we're going to go get that from the simulator. So now we're going to the web interface for the simulator. We're going to go to users here, and we're going to click on the first user and go to show S3 credentials. So we'll get that user information. Put that in. And again, the important thing to note is that when you use the simulator, instead of using port 80, for the simulator, you use port 8080. Okay, so we'll see if that works. Let's save that. We got it saved, and now we can open. And now here's the simulator. It's got less buckets, but it's got files, and I could, move a file over just like I could the real BlackPearl. The difference here is that this job, because there's no tape library connected to the simulator, or there's no simulated tape library, this job will sit here forever. It'll never be completed because it's made it to the cache of the simulated cache of BlackPearl, but it's never going to make it to tape. It'll never get complete. So that job will just sit there. So that's just something to keep in mind. I'm going to go ahead and cancel that job. But you can, for basic presentation purposes, the simulator works. But if you want to show all the cool stuff I showed you about how it goes to tape and showing the barcode label and all that stuff, showing the job completing, then you'll need a real BlackPearl, and that's where I recommend you use that remotely accessible BlackPearl BP Lab. So that's it on the BlackPearl Eon browser. Let's go ahead and move over now to something similar, but is more command line based. It's called the Java CLI. So let's get rid of that. So the Java CLI is available, and by the way, I didn't show you where all these clients are available. So on this same site, developer.spectralogic.com, if you go to clients, you can download these clients that I'm demonstrating to you today. Again, they're all free, open source. Anybody can download them, no registration required. So on the client's page, here's the Eon browser. You can download that, and here's the user guide. So that's what we just looked at. The other one is the Java command line interface. And again, it's basically a command line version of the same thing, right? Restoring and archiving and restoring files. And if you can download it here, it's on GitHub. If you click on it, you'll see it goes to GitHub. So you can actually see the source code and everything. And then there's also a reference and examples page that walks you through how to use the Java CLI. Pretty detailed, even has a video overview of how to do it. But in terms of what you'll get when you download the Java CLI, it's going to look like this. You're going to get a folder that contains two other folders, a bin and a lib folder. The bin is where the command line actually exists, and the command, depending on which operating system you use, is going to be one of these two files that will be running. Here in Windows, I can open a command prompt directly to this directory. So I can say ds3 Java CLI, and let's say I just want to see what all the commands are. I could do -H, of course, and I can see a list of all the commands. I could also just issue the commands here. I could do ds3 Java CLI. The command is, maybe I want to, one of the commands is get service, which is a list of all the buckets on the BlackPearl. And then I have to type in some other stuff, right, about what is the BlackPearl, what's the address, what are the credentials, and so forth. What I like to do, though, just to make management of this easier, is I created a number of batch files that do that for me, just to make it easier. So these files are available on the developer website as well. So, for example, have a batch file that's called get service. So this is just a file that contains a command line command. Instead of issuing the command, I can just run the file, and then it'll issue that command. So if I go to my notepad editor here, I can see what this looks like. So here's my getService.bat. So this is the file. Let's go ahead and connect it to BP Lab. So that's bplab.spectralogic.com. And I think the access ID is the same. Let me just check the secret key. You'll find that the access ID for the same users is the same across BlackPearl systems, but the secret key changes. So let's go to users. We're going to use our Spectra admin user. We're going to get the credentials here. I already have the access ID, but I need the secret key. Let's put that in. And then we'll go back to the command, to the notepad editor where that is, and we'll put that in here. And the command is get service, which again is going to give you a list of buckets, and we want to use HTTP instead of HTTPS, and we want verbose output, okay? So I can save that file, and now instead of having to type all that whole command, I can just type in the name of the file, which is get service. So I'll type in get service. Let's see if that works. So it's giving us a bunch of data, and now you can see I got a list of all the buckets that are on this BlackPearl. Now, of course, the Java CLI is useful for archiving and restoring. We also use it a lot internally and with our partners for troubleshooting. It has a lot of tools that help you find out what's going on with the system and jobs and things like that. So it's kind of a dual-purpose utility. We could also say, for example, archive a whole directory. So here's a command that is going to archive this directory, ctemp-dir4. Let's just go look and see what's in there. So it's not, I'm going to make sure it's not too much. Let's actually change it to dir3. That works. And so we'll put that into that bucket I created called Jeff2. So let's see if that works. So what I'm doing here is I'm telling the Java CLI to archive everything in this directory to, I want it to go to this BlackPearl, and I want it to go into this bucket, okay? Let's just double check and make sure we have that bucket. There it is, there's Jeff2, it's currently empty. So that you can see now I'm using the Deep Storage browser just to browse around, right, just to see what's in things. So let's go ahead and issue that command. So let's save this. We've got our directory. Again, we're going to archive this folder right here, which actually has another folder called dir3, which has these 3 files. So let's go ahead and issue that on the command line. So the name of the file is put bulk. So I'm going to issue that put bulk. Let's see if that works. So it says it wrote all the files. You can see the last thing it says here, wrote all the files to ctemp-dir. Let's actually go and see if that made it successfully. So let's refresh. Let's go to Jeff2 here, and there you can see, sure enough, there's our files. And just like when we did it on the this deep storage browser, you can see that the files are in cache. They're not yet on tape. Now the job doesn't display here, right? The job doesn't display on the deep storage browser because the deep storage browser only shows jobs that it initiates. But I can go see the job in the web management interface of BlackPearl. So let's go to status S3 jobs. There's our job. Jeff2 is because the bucket was Jeff2, as you recall. You can see again we've sent 4.2 kilobytes. It's all made it to cache. None of it has gone to tape yet, but it will in the next couple of minutes. So you've seen that I can move a whole directory of files with just this one command. It's really pretty powerful. Now you could use this in a lot of ways. You could create a little utility for a customer, and now let me show you actually one that I did create for a customer where all they wanted to do is they know they have some directories and they want to be able to archive the directory. And what they wanted to do though is they wanted to actually zip it, put it in one file, because they might have had some small files, and BlackPearl prefers larger files, of course. So what they do is they zip it up. They actually create a new bucket for it because that folder represents a customer, which is a project, and they wanted its own bucket for it. And so what it does is it zips that folder up, and then it sends that creates the bucket and sends the zip file to BlackPearl. And you can see it's just a few lines of code. I am not a programmer, but I was able to hack together this easy command line script for them. So all they have to do is they have to go to their command line, type in archive space, and then type in the name of the directory, hit enter, and all this will happen. That entire directory will get archived. And of course, if you want, you could delete the directory. I didn't do that just to be safe. I hate to delete something the customer has. But it does does some checks to make sure it got there successfully, and it does delete the zip file that's created and does some other nice cleanup work. So the command line interface is a very simple tool that has a lot of powerful capabilities. So you could write a script like this. The other thing you could do, of course, is you could create an automated script, maybe using a cron job or a Windows task scheduler that every night maybe goes and moves files, maybe a directory that has a particular date stamp on it or something, right? You could write a script that could identify that directory and automatically move it over to BlackPearl. So you can do some basic level of automation of moving things to BlackPearl or even restoring, of course, using this command line interface. So very, seemingly simple, but very powerful tool. Okay. So that's what I wanted to show you on the command line interface. Now let's go ahead and actually create a BlackPearl application ourselves. A real basic one, of course, but we've got 21 minutes. That's plenty of time to write a whole application, right? So how are we going to get started? Well, let's go ahead. I want to build an application. I'm going to build it using .NET, so I'm going to write it in C#. And I want it to, I just want to be able to enter some basic BlackPearl information and press a button and have a directory moved over to BlackPearl. I just want it to be very simple, but I want to show the power of the software development kits. So in order to get started, we need to download the .NET SDK. So let's do that. So we'll go to Downloads. We're going to go ahead and download the .NET SDK latest release here. So we'll go to Download .NET SDK. Let's download 342. And what we want, so when you're working with .NET projects, as some of you may know, you're going to use a program called Visual Studio, which is the software tool you use to create Microsoft applications. And we're going to download the SDK in what's called a new package, a NuGet package. And so what we do is we download this library. We click on this link. We'll download it locally. And we want that file is the SDK. That contains the code libraries that allows us to issue these simple commands in our application to archive and restore and do other things. Let me just, let's see. I need to go to, I always forget, sorry, stumbling here a sec. Don't think, yeah, so I need to go to my downloads directory here and get that. And there it is. So there's the package. I'm just going to put it on my desktop because that's where I typically look for things and use them. So you can see that's the package we just downloaded. Let's go ahead and create an application now using that. So we're going to go to New Project. And again, I'm in Visual Studio. This is a free development environment tool that anybody can download to get to build Microsoft applications. So I'm going to create a new project. I want to create a Windows Forms application. So it's going to get everything set up for us. You can see we're going to create a little basic form, a little application. The first thing we need to do is we need to bring in that SDK code library. So the way we do that in Visual Basic is we right-click on the solution over here, and we go to Manage NuGet Packages for the solution. Now you can see it actually already came up to list anything I want to add. And I have Visual Studio programmed to look on my desktop for any new NuGet packages. And I did that under the settings. Under package sources, I told it to look on my desktop for new NuGet packages. So there's the ds3.net one that we just downloaded. You can see it's the 342, as you may recall from the GitHub site. Let's go ahead and install that. Say OK. Okay, so we're all set. It's all installed. Now what we're going to do is we're going to build that application, okay? So let's create a very simple application that has some fields to enter the BlackPearl information, and then a message, a confirmation message when everything's uploaded, and then a button to actually process everything. So we need to add 6 text fields, and we'll do that really quickly with a copy and paste here. So I'm going to just add one box here, make it a little bigger. And we'll copy, Control-C, and then Control-V that 5 times to create our application. Okay, so now we have our 5 fields. Let's go ahead and label them so that we know what they are. These are all going to be the first 5 are for the BlackPearl credentials, and the last one will just be a confirmation message. So this first one, we want it so we know what it is so we can remember. Let's just put IP, because that's where you're going to put the IP or server name. So we'll do that. The next thing we're going to do is enter the port number. The next thing we're going to enter is the name of the bucket. The next one will be the access ID, if you remember that. That's part of the login credentials. And the next one will be the secret key. That's the other part of the credentials. And then finally, the last one we're going to leave blank because we're going to show a message in there when the files have been uploaded successfully. Now let's go ahead and add a button that is going to upload it to BlackPearl. So we'll have this button, and let's just change it to say, instead of button 1, let's make it say, upload to BlackPearl. Okay? So what we want to have happen is when somebody fills in these fields and then presses the button, we want the upload to start. So this is an action we add on the click of the button. And in order to add an action on the click of the button, you double-click on the button, and it'll create this set of code for you. So now we've got the code set up. And so the first thing we need to do is we need to reference the SDK library. So these using statements in programming, if you're not familiar with them, basically reference code libraries, other sets of code that allows you to reference them. And so we need to do that because we have now code for our SDK. And so we refer to that as DS3 is one of them we have to add, and then using DS3.helpers. Those are the ones we have to add. Now what I'm going to do to save us some time is I'm going to copy and paste some code. I'm going to cheat a little bit, but you'll see it's not too much. So I'm going to copy some paste in over from a text box I have on my other screen, and we will paste that in, and we'll see that there's 4 lines of code. And I know for those of you not comfortable with code, don't worry about it. It's really simple. The first is we're setting up the communication with BlackPearl. We're entering the credentials and reaching out to BlackPearl, making sure it's there. The second thing we're doing is we're setting up the job to move the directory. So we're basically telling the program, here's the files I want to do. And then the third line actually sends those files to BlackPearl. And then once that's done, you get a confirmation message in the box. So if we did everything right, we'll be able to enter the information now and see it work. So I hit Control-S just to save everything. Now I'm going to click on Start. This will start the application running. So we just did it. We built a Windows application in just, 7 minutes or something, right? So let's put in bplab.spectralogic.com. The port number is going to be 80 because that's a real BlackPearl. I think we want to use Jeff 2 this time for the bucket. Let's just double check that. We use Jeff 2, so we'll use Jeff 3 actually. We have nothing in there that'll make it cleaner. So we'll do Jeff 3 for the bucket name. Now we need to go get that access ID and secret key for a user on BP Lab, the BlackPearl we're using. There it is. So we'll go to users and again copy and paste that information. So now we'll copy the access ID and we'll copy the secret key. And if everything works, cross your fingers. Oh, and one thing I didn't show you, of course, is just the where the files are coming from. So we chose to use ctempdir3, and what does that look like? Let's just take a look at that. It's the same. That's actually that same directory we used for our Java CLI, which is fine. But it's going into another bucket, so there's no name conflicts problems because it's going into a different bucket. So we will click Upload to BlackPearl, and boom, it's already complete. So let's see if that's really true. So let's go to Jeff 3 bucket. Let's refresh. And sure enough, there's our information. And again, if we go back to the BlackPearl, we can see that that is, let's go back to the job. There's Jeff 3, and we can see that it made it to cache and not on tape though. So that's really all I wanted to show you. We're actually ahead of schedule, so it's good we got some time for questions. If you've got any questions right now, go ahead and put them in your chat window, or let's see, I'm also going to see if I can unmute everybody. We'll see how the noise is. I may have to mute everybody. We'll see what happens. Okay, everybody's unmuted now. If you've got any questions, please shoot them my way or just put them in the chat. Okay. We've got a quiet crowd today, I guess. Let me just check the chat. Here we go. Okay. I hear a little noise, so that's good. All right, well, I think that's all I wanted to cover today. Again, let me just go back to the first slide so you can get my contact information. Again, I'm Jeff. I'm a senior product manager at Spectra Logic. My email address is there. Feel free to contact me. Working with Spectra, of course, probably mostly of you know your Spectra sales reps. Hopefully some of them invited you here today. So definitely work through them as you've got deals or trying to promote BlackPearl or opportunities with Spectra Logic. We have solution architects for each of our sales reps that could do pretty much all the stuff I just showed you. So they're happy to go with you, or work with you on with a customer site to train either your own team or your customers and show your customers all these different tools. Thanks a lot for your time, and we hope to hear from you soon. Take care. Bye-bye.